Good evening, everyone. It's now 6 o'clock. All set and ready. Just gonna make sure I have my phone vibrate. Good evening again. It's now a minute after 6, and so we're scheduled for 6, right at 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and we'll get started. Of course, we're here today, this evening, for budget workshop. So, I think so much. So this time we're going to go ahead and call the Town of Montgomery Park Town Council Workshop of January 30th, 2024, the session. Roll call, please. Here. 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 Vice Johnson is approaching the desk. Right. Let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Johnson is here. She's now getting ready to join the dais. So we do have a quorum. So at this time, we'll just give her a moment to get settled.
this, we may ask for a consensus just to move in a particular direction or not, and that's greatly appreciated. Most of the items on the agenda you've probably been brought to you at some point in some shape or form before. Two exceptions to that would be we've not had a conversation in regard to the SROA and the water line situation over there. I think the mayor and I had a brief conversation a week or so back, and we haven't talked about some repairs or improvements to the town hall parking lot, at least not in the current budget, have we? I encourage everyone to ask as many questions as you need. David is going to go first. David, stand by, our utility engineer from Calvin Giordano. He needs to be leaving around 7 o'clock. So, but we do encourage questions there. MIDI needs some firm direction on council's desires in regard to vacation rentals. This is something that's been brought up a few times, and we've asked for direction, and I think now we're at a point where we kind of need to nail this down and move forward.
Just before you proceed, can let the record reflect that Councilwoman Webb has joined the dais. Go right ahead.
On beautification, I took some of your comments from November 14th meeting, and we just have some stuff to show you on that tonight, and I'll be as brief as possible, but Mr. Mayor, it's your pleasure. We can have David begin his presentation.
Certainly. Okay, and we'll do that at this time. David?
Good evening, and thank you, David Stanbaugh, Calvin Giordano. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you this evening, give you a few updates on some projects that we've discussed. I did provide a handout sewer system. Just a recap of what we have, what we have in that agreement. $1.5 million agreement. It was executed in January 23. It has an expiration date of end of year 2025. There is some other language in the agreement that states that construction should be completed at the end of June of 25. So that's what we're basing our schedule on. Just to recap the scope of work for that project: to replace septic tanks. Well, sorry, just to add the sanitary sewer system along the Bryn Mawr neighborhood. Generically, that's from South Place to West Place. Within that corridor, 12 properties currently on septic will be converted, and it's important that improvement also include a new sewer lift station. I'm calling these Zone 11A, 11B. There's some maps that are in your pamphlet that give you some defined areas there, and we'll take a look at those in a second. But for 11B, that's the area generally described as Lakeshore Drive from Boardman all the way up to, I guess that would be the entrance into the Meritage property. Within that corridor, 6 properties converted to septic tanks. It's important to note that you could not go with 11B as a standalone, because that flow of those pipes have to end up in the lift station that's proposed under 11A. So 11A has to happen. 11B would be the secondary system to that new system. Within that same corridor, we also are taking a look at the water main improvements that are needed in that area. There are many homes in that area that are also on private water wells. And in some cases, the homes also are served by a small diameter 2-inch water main in the rear lots. These are the properties along Boardman Avenue. That'll tie into the update for the SROA project, which is of course right across the rear lot boundary lines. So just to generally describe, like I said, the water main improvements 11, I'm sorry, water main improvements, water area 1A, B, and C, and we can show those maps to the page that's listed as, it's a map. It's a map that's on the right reads future lift sanitary lift station future zone 11. And just to show, we've got different types of lines to describe 11A or 11B, whether it's a dashed line or a solid line. And just to note the properties, you'll see there's octagons or sextagons, I don't know what they're called, the stop sign looking shapes to show an S or W. Those indicate properties that are either on septic and or raw water wells. The next map is labeled potable water systems future service areas. Again, this map just delineates the areas defined as 1A, B, and C. Flipping over to the following page is some cost information at the top. So the purpose of this was to show where we started. That second column for project cost as separate bids. When we estimated this, we treated them as all standalone projects, as if they were completely by themselves. What we did was we tried to compare how that cost could be saved by doing them together as one. So you would save things like mobilization, some contractor general conditions, things like that benefit. So we just try to project what the benefit would be to doing multiple areas at one time. You can see if we did them all, we projected about $160,000 savings in cost. Other things, if you can imagine, ripping up the road one time and repairing it, obviously that would only have to be done once if it were a combined project. The next page really defines where we are today. It's another cost, 4 columns. This project was originally estimated, I believe, in 2019. At that point in time, that really formulated what the scope of work for that grant would be. can see, we estimated all those projects as a total of 3.77 million at that time. I'm sorry. The first column is where we are today. The third column is the May 2022 estimate, which was back then a $2.49 million combined project. Moving forward into, this was really the latter part of 23, where cost escalations have really gone very high, very fast, and we estimated that to be 3.77. So you can see it there, column to the right. You know, all in all, we ended up with about a $1.2 million difference in cost. So now we have the dilemma of a grant that's $1.5 million worth of funding and more scope than that can afford, essentially. So we've met with the DP. We are in constant communication with them. The town manager and I meet with them every other week right now, talking to them about what our options are. Our current approach is to go ahead and design all of the items here, all project areas, 11A, A and B, and 1A, B, and C. To go out to bid with kind of a menu of items, if you will. A base bid, which is that lift station zone 11A, because we said that has to happen. And then the other items as alternates to evaluate what the actual cost to the contractor would be. So there's a significance there. Like me doing an estimate is my best guess, essentially, best educated guess. Taking that to what we would actually have to pay, well, that ended up coming from a contractor. So what we're doing is want to get those bids in to determine what the actual cost would be. Continue to keep in contact with the grant agency to talk about what options we may have at that point. The grant project managers have indicated there is opportunities at times for additional funding that may come through various coordination efforts with the state representatives. But until we really know what additional monies we need, preliminarily designed. We will be going in for permits to the Department of Health for the new water system and then separately for the new sewer system. We're projecting right now a schedule to be under construction as soon as beginning of July of this year. Because as I mentioned, we got a construction deadline of end of June of 2025. So we're going to project a 1-year duration for construction. So if nothing else, I wanted to give you guys a heads up that we will be in that neighborhood under some type of scope in the beginning of July of this year.
So I might add, Mr. Mayor, if I may, to that. So the summary on the septic to sewer is we're going to go out to bid before too much longer. The engineering firm has, I think, maybe 75% complete as far as the design work goes. Once it's complete, we take it out to bid. The base bid that we're asking for is just what the appropriation from the state is, so 1.5 million. So we're thinking that would be just the sewer alone, and the alternative bids, David, if I get this wrong, the alternative bids would be sewer from Lake Shore to West Place, and now the base bid would be sewer on Boardman alone. The alternate bids would be sewer from Lake Shore to West Place, and then another alternative bid would be water and sewer from Lake Shore to West Place. So just be thinking along those lines when we go out to bid. It is going to be with the thought of the base bid being sewer only on Boardman with the lift station.
update for SRA OA. I want you to remember one thing, that one of the alternate items is to put a new water main on Boardman, to eventually convert those existing residents that are on Boardman now, that are served by the rear lot water connections through that 2-inch diameter main, is to convert them over to a new water main that's served from the front side of their lots on Boardman. So now I want to give you that update on the SRO project, which is right across the rear property line. So they started in construction, I believe, late September. They initiated their underground utility work. They have now alerted us to tell us that the existing water main that serves those houses on Boardman is not actually located within the utility easement there. It was quite a surprise to us all. We didn't know that. The developer didn't know that. They found it the hard way, if I will, by digging in their improvements that are on their actual private property. So we have had an interruption of service due to some breaks out there. They've identified where the existing water main actually is. It's outside of the easement. So now the developer, of course, needing to keep things moving, has proposed and is actively constructing a new water main for the town, a 2-inch diameter water main. So they are actually in the process, as we speak right now, of putting in that pipe. And it will actually be in the easement. So that is actually happening right now. That was their decision at risk to move forward with that. I do think there's some anticipation of some discussions at some point with them about that. That is actually happening right now. So the purpose of this is really just to acknowledge that, unfortunately, the existing water main was not where we thought it was. And there's a change going on with that development to put that new water main in. So that's an that's why they decided to move forward immediately, is to not incur any delays with their project. So the significance there, like I mentioned, with that septic to sewer project where we were actually proposing a water main on Boardman, that's important because we now have a situation where we were planning to put a new water main in the front side of the lot. So I want to add that the reason we proposed that water main to begin with on Boardman was to make it a bigger diameter. The one in the rear lots that's existing and the one that the developer is replacing is a 2-inch diameter water main. That is, in today's terms, not standard to put in a 2-inch water main. But they're putting back what was there. We proposed a 6-inch diameter water main. Sorry, an 8-inch diameter water main up there because we felt like it would provide significant hydraulic benefits to the town's distribution system. Essentially, that creates a loop. It connects to the system that Meritage Homes installed that stubs out at the entrance on West Place. So, just the food for thought. That's why I brought those two together, one after another, because they do tie in from my world in terms of a hydraulic capacity benefit.
What was the reason for the suggestion not being extended to? We went from a suggested 8-inch to what they're now doing is a 2-inch.
They're putting back what was there. There's some language in the Florida Administrative Code and the DEP requirements that allow any utility to replace an existing main as is, if you will, existing diameters and things like that, without having to go through the permitting process and things like that. So that's what they're doing. They wanted to just keep their progress moving, so they decided to move on.
And we certainly want that to happen. We don't want to have any delays at all. We want to see that building up. But technically, it wasn't in the easement, so.
Correct.
That is correct. So a couple foods for thought, right? Leave it there. Well, the developer immediately came back and said, well, what if it breaks in the future? What if it damages my building? What if you guys, as the town, have to come out and dig up my private property to maintain it? So that immediately got ruled out by the developer to leave it alone. So the decision is to do something. I don't think there was enough time for them to pause, let us consider constructing the new main and Boardman, because you can see how long that would take and how much delays that would cause their team. So, nonetheless, we're here now. We're just trying to keep everybody in mind, and we will continue talking with them. We are observing construction and participating. My firm is to make sure that it's constructed with due care and of today's standards, because ultimately that will be turned over to the town, as your water main.
And I'll yield the floor in just a moment to our Vice Mayor. But just to follow up, the last follow-up I would have would be simply this: a statement for the most part is that I guess each of us here trust our engineer to make the decision regarding these things, and if you find that to be sufficient, they're saying, guys, I'm sorry, here's the 2-inch. We understand the technicality that wasn't an easement, so we're technically not putting it back like it was. Right. Then we yield to that. Yeah, for me, I just needed to know, excuse me, I'm sorry, that in a situation where we have opportunity to build for today and tomorrow, as opposed to building today what was sufficient yesterday, that there's some legitimate, I mean, not legitimate is not the right word, but an appropriate reason for it. And if you feel as the engineer that this is appropriate, we move forward, I have no issue with it.
I mean, my big thing is we could have tried to come back and say, put in the bigger diameter, but ultimately it's the goal of the utility to eliminate all of those rear lot water main connections. Those are maintenance items are problematic. It means if we have to maintain it, we have to go on private property, we have to the way things were built back in the day. It's not at anyone's fault, but as we continue to upgrade and replace, we try to put those in the street so that they can be easily accessed.
But at this, but as, excuse me, but, so what's taking place now in terms of the bill, that it would be their responsibility to maintain,
No, sir.
still ours.
The goal is they basically are building a water main for the town at this point. And let me add that the pipe that was there was plastic PVC pipe, but it was thinner walled, Schedule 4, if you know what that is. So it's not something that we would have even specified today if it were a design by me. So it was not an easement, not a desired material. You can see there's a few different negatives that, I think ultimately the town is benefiting by getting a new water main. It's today's standard material. It just, to me, hydraulically, it's not benefiting much. It's really just meant to keep the developer moving and not interrupt service by those customers.
Okay, thanks, I appreciate it, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, that's part of my question. I also want to know, how is that going to work for connectivity? If we are in need of an 8-inch diameter
sewer on Boardman? No water? Yes, sir. The grant, just to keep in mind, the grant was a septic to sewer conversion grant. So technically speaking, it was for that reason. What we're trying to do is consider water because ripping up the road once, there's some savings there to do it all at the same time. But yes, sir, the grant is only for sewer, and originally it was going to be a bigger boundary, meaning it was going to be the Boardman and the Lake Shore area for sewer. But now, due to cost escalation and the amount of the grant, which is 1.5 million, the only thing that I think can be constructed in that budget is the Boardman sewer only, inclusive of the lift station. There's, I know, a lot of residents was looking forward to the water also. Now, we're not writing it off altogether. We're just saying that when we go to bid, we have to have the bid documents where they reflect the appropriation. Now, so the alternative bids on that would include water on board. Was there a question? I'm sorry.
No, she kind of asked my question because I was going to ask how would that benefit Boardman, but she already asked the question, everything was already answered. I did 2-inch, not 8. So what you're saying is we're gonna have to dig the road up again for water. Is that where we're at? Unless we try to include it in the project. That recommendation, and we'll talk about the master plan in a little bit, but ultimately my recommendation is always going to be to put an 8-inch water main in that area because it provides hydraulic improvements. Fire hydrants aren't there, right? It provides fire hydrants in the areas. We have a lift station that, so yes, there's that recommendation that from a hydraulic standpoint will always be there. So if there's a way for us is the way the government works. You know, it's, I mean, when they done 45th Street, they got the whole road done, came back and started digging holes all over the place. I mean, it just didn't make any, you know, it didn't make any sense. What are you doing? You just redone the whole road, and now you're coming back digging a big hole here, big hole here, big hole here, and patch it. And just, you know, just don't, it don't make any sense. Is there any way that maybe the town could come up with the money to put the water in at the same time?
Absolutely. I mean, obviously we would have to talk once we get those bids in, find out what it is, how it compares to the grant that's 1.5 million. Yes, sir, absolutely. There's a decision time at that point on what to do. It may be the DEP can come up with the money. It may be that they cannot, and that the money's all, they don't have any more funding for that cycle, and there has to be a consideration by the town on whether or not we want to try to really reap the benefits of the efficiency gain by doing it all at once, not having to rip up the road again.
How close can them two lines be?
There's some standard separation requirements that the Florida Administrative Code declares, and you caught me off guard. I think it's roughly 6-foot sidewall to sidewall separation along that corridor. So we are designing it that way, just so you know. Right now, at the end of this project for us, we're going to have a permit with the health department to do it all. Those permits are typically good for 5 years. So it's going to be essentially a shovel-ready, if you want to talk about it that way, condition. Clearly, if we don't do it now and we pick it up 4.5 years from now, anybody that does something out there that changes won't be captured in our survey and things like that. So there's some inefficiencies that we're going to inherit by waiting, but ultimately we're going to be ready to go.
I mean, the way everything
just done it now. And it shouldn't cost as much because they already dug the road up. So it should be cheaper to do it now than it's gonna be 2 or 3 or 5 years.
I hate to put the governing body up against the wall, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Right now is the most efficient time to do it as part of that sewer project.
Because it behooves the town to see if we can come up with the money to put the water in now. Not only because of the cost, but the residents they're looking forward when that job gets done and there's only sewer. What happened to the water? Where the water go?
And just to note, just like we've done with the other septic to sewer projects, it would be similar fashion for water. At the end of the project, the residents aren't actually connected. If you recall, we put the pipes in the right of way, and then we came back as a separate, basically town hired a plumber to do all this private property connections. So it's a similar approach to how we've done these projects in the past. But yes, sir, absolutely, you're correct.
Speaking of fire hydrants, where can you put a fire hydrant at this point? Maybe in the new enclave area or down, where can we put a fire hydrant due to the fact that now we have a water problem?
The only you can imagine a fire hydrant is a 6-inch diameter connection. It's a 6-inch pipe. So clearly you couldn't connect a 6-inch pipe to an existing 2-inch and expect it to be the so the closest hydrant right now would be all you would have if we didn't do a water improvement, and that one is at South Place and Boardman. And then there are
we didn't lose the house totally, but we hooked to a hydrant that was fed by a 2-inch line and couldn't get the water. I mean, we saved face, but the house, was damaged pretty bad. But nobody knew it. We hooked to the hydrant thinking, it's a fire hydrant. And they run a 2-inch line to the fire hydrant.
Previous owners probably had some regular sprinkler type stuff.
That's when they're doing stuff at midnight. Nobody's watching.
It was horrible. Before David moved, I'm sorry, anything else on what we've discussed thus far? Before David moved on, I maybe it's prudent at this point to just kind of understand what we are and what we should be doing. And for me, I'm looking at, not trying to be quick about it. I'm looking at the previous discussion, that page where we have the figures, right? Where we went from at the point in time back in 2022 of what the cost estimate was at that point in time to where it is now, $1.2 billion, waiting, right? I'm a man of analogies, and sometimes they go over, sometimes they irritate. So let's see what's going to happen tonight. I went to the store the other day, and I saw the suit that I wanted, right? And I wanted the shirt and the tie and the shoes and everything else to go with it. My credit card said I could only get the suit. So what I can do is wait, right, to see what happens. But then the cost of the shoes and the shirt and everything else goes up. So do I go ahead and get the suit at this point in time, hoping that at some point in time I can find the shirt for a little cheaper? It's a good analogy. So let's buy the suit now. Because what happened is that the cost of the shoes and everything else went up. Now we can't get the shoes in this. Right? If we get that analogy. Right. So I think the more we wait, in all seriousness, I think the more we wait, the worse off we are. There are
different circumstances that play into all of them, like anything, like any of the fine print that we would have to go through and read. There's also an opportunity to ask for an extension of time on the grant. But like you guys are very smart and wise in knowing is the more time likely the costs are going to go up. So there's some options there. Like I said, the town manager and I stay in contact with the grant project manager just to keep these conversations current. So that's why we're trying to zero in as fast as we can on the actual cost of these construction bids.
Alrighty. Any any idea of when do we plan to put these out?
We would be looking to probably go out to bid in April timeframe, because ultimately what we're trying to do is be under construction with an estimated year duration. If you back that up, right, we got to be completed in June, basically end of June 25, we need to be starting June of 24. So therefore, to back that up even further, we probably need to be bidding sometime in April to get contracts negotiated, get everything ready by then.
And in the bid process, generally what happens, generally, and of course things change all the time, so I yield to the individuals who know. Generally when you get a bid, it sort of lock things in, so the pricing and all of that. So, and I think that's the urgency, right? So that if we, and I know it takes a little time, so if we get that out on the street in April, I think we're okay, because this begins to lock things in at that point. Again, I wish we could do it all at once, but
We'll see what the bids bear out.
alrighty, appreciate it. Anything else before David continues? Okay, all right, Dave.
In the essence of time, I'm going to move on. There are some maps and things. The SRA has a map. I mean, I've told you everything you're going to see, which is essentially the water main's not where we thought it was. I want to get into the master plan update.
until near the end of the project, right? Is that correct?
Live with what?
As far as connecting to the existing customers.
They will be wanting to connect us pretty soon. Because that existing water line being outside of the easement is causing them potential issues with their construction. So they will want to make that connection soon, and then later they're going to connect their own property, which is what I've always planned to the system.
My point is, before they connect to our existing customers, that would have to come back. There would have to be an agreement in place through our attorney. So that would have to come back to town council at least one more time to review all aspects of that.
So that the council is clear. So we're talking what the 5 properties that abut their property, or
You say 5, I didn't count, but yes, sir, if that's the number. It's basically the properties on Boardman from South Place over to West Place on that side of the road, on the south side of Boardman.
okay. Okay. Just wanted to be clear that we weren't talking all properties there because they're across the street, some of them. Okay.
Okay, if you will, I'll move on to the master plan. all the things we've talked about, whether it's flow and pressure or fire hydrants. We know that there's some undesirable materials such as asbestos cement out there that all utilities are targeting to replace because they just are brittle and cause a lot of maintenance headaches. So as an update,